Divisions between Greece and its European creditors remain as bailout talks continue in Brussels. Athens has rejected a counter-proposal from its European creditors over divisions and reform plans. Ahead of the Eurogroup meeting, the Greek Prime Minister attacked the International Monetary Fund for rejecting the reform proposals submitted by Greece. Meanwhile, Germany says the talks are far from over and they still have a long way to go in order to reach a bailout deal. Greece has been under mounting pressure to agree to reforms proposed by its European creditors as the default looms. Athens will have to default on its debt at the end of this month if it fails to repay the IMF nearly $1.6 billion in loans. Jerome Hughes, our correspondent, joins us from Brussels. Maybe you can tell us more about this. Jerome Hughes, obviously very confusing. You know, one day it's good, one day it's promising, the next day Jusselbaum, head of the Eurogroup, had said the proposal was a good one. It's something to work on, but things are not looking as positive.
No, things are not looking as positive, and it's interesting. We keep hearing about, the end of the month, the deadline is approaching. Well, the end of the month is actually next Tuesday, so the deadline really is approaching. We're going to have another few key meetings happening over the next couple of days here in Brussels because Alexis Tsipras is back here in Brussels. What's been happening since Monday, since the Greek government presented its latest reform proposals on Monday, technical teams have been examining those proposals. Now the 19 Eurozone ministers, known as the Eurogroup, they will be meeting all evening to try and hammer out an agreement. And then if progress can be made, then tomorrow and on Friday, we will hear from the EU heads of government. Will be meeting on Thursday and Friday here in Brussels. So again, if there's a deal, it will be rubber stamped at that point. But what we understand, there's been a leaked document from the International Monetary Fund, which is one of the main lenders to Greece, and it's a 5-page document, and apparently it tears apart the text of the Greek government proposals that were put forward on Monday. Apparently the IMF believes that the proposals just do not go far enough. And the key blocking point here, we understand, surrounds the whole issue of pensions. The reason pensions is such a major issue in these negotiations, two main reasons really. Firstly, from a political point of view, politically and humanitarian point of view, and I'll explain that briefly. From a political point of view, of course, you have a very strong lobby group within the older population. They're major voters, so there's a very strong lobby group. So the Greek government, the Syriza-led government, knows that it has to keep the older people happy in that sense. And while there is some movement possibly on, increasing the retirement age so that people work longer, basically the Greek government, Alexis Tsipras and his finance minister Yanis Varoufakis, is saying there's going to be no reduction in the actual pension payments. And this leads me on to the humanitarian side of things, because you have a huge number of families in Greece who the whole family is entirely dependent on the pension payment. So, you have 1 in 4 people unemployed in Greece. You have 1/3 of the population suffering terrible poverty. And you have families dependent on these pension payments because they've lost their jobs or they cannot find work, etc. So really, that's why the whole pensions issue is very important. And again, this is something that the Greek government says they will not budge on in terms of actually reducing the pension payments. So we just don't know. Things are very much up in the air, and the next few days will tell us. But Tuesday, if Greece cannot release this €7.2 billion bailout, come to an agreement with its international creditors and release this bailout before Tuesday, then it will default on the €1.6 billion loan repayment to the IMF. It will fall out of the Eurozone and possibly the EU, and then the contagion effects, we don't know. And just one key point on this, the reason we need a deal really in the next 48 hours is because there are several parliaments, national parliaments in the EU, who would have to ratify any agreement that is reached, and also the Athens Parliament itself would also have to ratify the agreement before the funds can be released before the Tuesday deadline. So it's not as if we can go right up to the wire on Tuesday, but at the same time, all sides in these negotiations, they're using time pressures to try and get the best possible deal from their perspective.
Yeah, I really would love to find out what Vladimir Putin had told Tsipras during his visit in Russia this past Saturday and his advice on how to proceed. But we won't know that. Thank you very much for that. Jerome Hughes from Brussels, a correspondent there.